Welcome back to the Knick-Knack Review. Today we're looking at the last episode of Loki, episode 6. Whew! It was a good one. Let's get started. Here we go, the season finale of Loki. And man, it starts out with the Marvel logo, like it normally does, but this time you heard all these certain catchphrases from the Marvel Universe, all these different movies, and it was really kind of different, but it was kind of like you started catching different things, and you're like, wow, they're going through literally through the timeline, and it just got you wondering, like, why'd you start off that way? As you hear more dialogue, the camera pans all the way into the timeline. You finally get to see the timeline. Big old circle. Well, yeah, I guess basically a circle. And it zooms out, and eventually you see Loki and Sylvie at the head of the castle, just waiting to get in there. And she's kind of hesitant, and Loki's like, come on, let's go. And she's like, listen, I've been waiting for this point my whole life. Just give me a minute. And then the door opens up, and they're like, okay. So as they're walking through the castle, they're greeted by Miss Minutes, and at first I was like, aha! Because at first I might have had a little bit of a thought that she might have been behind some of this. Not all of this, but there was more to her than meets the eye. It was just something about her. The fact that she was not a recording, and she was live, and she sounded like a recording. I just thought there was more to her than just a little, cartoon animated apparition that was just there to give you information. Well, finds out that's what she was there for, to give them information, to talk to them, and tell them about He Who Remains. Now, I mentioned this, I believe, in the first episode, in my first review of the show, and of episode 1, and He Who Remains originally created the Timekeepers, the real Timekeepers, not the ones that were killed in the one of the previous episodes, and that's basically who she warns them of, like, He Who Remains, he's got a plan, but he has a proposition for you. If you do this, he'll put you back in the timeline. You'll get to rule. You'll get to do this, and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, we'll just go meet him ourselves. I just couldn't believe that she actually mentioned He Who Remains. I was hoping for that in the series. Didn't think I would actually get it. But there we go. We got it. So they go a little bit more into the castle, and it still feels like the final boss in a video game. I just love it. I love the feel of it, because they go through so many things throughout each episode, and they finally make it to the main boss. And I don't know, as someone who loves video games, I love that part. So they finally actually make it to He Who Remains. The elevator opens up, and you just see him sitting there in the elevator, and it's like, oh wow, it's him. They're like, He Who Remains, and they're like, oh. He's like, oh, she's still calling me that? Oh, well, I go by many names. And I'm like, could one of them be Kang? He never quite reveals his name, but I'll get to it in a minute. But he never says his name, but he kind of hints at it a little bit whenever he's giving his backstory. But he does mention that, oh, is that what she's calling me now? So you kind of get the gist that He Who Remains is a myth, but this person is the actual person who is in charge. He Who Remains in the comic books is a real person, whereas in here, it's just a myth. So back at the TVA, Mobius finally comes up to Ravonda and was like, yeah, we got some talking to do. And they go have a little bit of back and forth, and it was kind of funny because poor Mobius, he was like, oh yeah, I got the glow stick now. Here, I'm coming at you. And then she just, takes it away from him like nothing. He's like, all right, you earned that. And you actually see B-15 talking to other variants and explaining to the guards, like, hey, look, this is not what you think. This whole TVA setup, this is not what you think. We're all variants. You've been living a lie, and it's got that Matrix feel to it, and I absolutely love that. But that was really neat to see. You just see them basically waking up the guards. Cut back to the castle, and you see He Who Remains. He gives them the full backstory, and this is whenever I got confirmation of who he was. He basically tells them that there are endless universes, way more than the one we actually know now, and they're toppled on each other. And he's discovered it. In these universes, there are different variations of himself that have also discovered it. And they have found a way to cross into these universes and meet each other. Now, in the comic books, that was called the Council of Kangs. Therefore, making this person Kang the Conqueror. Yeah, baby! I called that one, and I'm so proud of that. I was really hoping for it to be Kang because it just makes too much sense. Number one, he's actually confirmed to be in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantum Mania, I believe. So I had a feeling Loki would help set him up, because how in the world in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantum Mania, you would have Kang be introduced in probably a 2-hour movie? To me, you need more of a setup. And he explains that all these different variations, not all of them were peaceful like himself. They were not all nice. Some of them were evil, and they actually battled each other for, different universes to become superior. And he explained that the timeline was all tangled and misshapen. It wasn't straight like it is now. And because of all that conflict, and he basically came up with the idea, or he fixed the timeline. He's like, okay, enough is enough. This is how it's going to be. So we don't have crisscrossing. We don't have wars. Basically to keep the multiverse from going to war. Boy, let me tell you, that pretty much confirmed a really big thing, a really big theory for me. I'll get to that in a second. Before I get to that, I must say, Jonathan Majors, you are an absolute gem. Your portrayal, your acting, should I say, is superb. I thought you did a great job. Not necessarily what I was expecting from Kang. Now, maybe the Kang in Ant-Man and the Wasp will be more of the Kang that I'm familiar with. I think of Kang the Conqueror as kind of a Genghis Khan, more of a hierarchy, not like this Kang kind of reminded me a little bit of the Joker, a little bit of a Riddler type, but not funny like that, but just a little over the top in a way, but not like bad over the top. In other words, he flexed his acting skills, but I'm really hoping for an Ant-Man and the Wasp that you really see that conqueror, that, I don't know. That's what I'm hoping for, but I will give him credit where credit is due. He did a great job with his acting. I really can't wait to see him in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, he does manage to manipulate both Loki, Sylvie, and Loki to actually fight each other. And it kind of sucked, but at the same time, you're like, oh, come on, they're right there. And they start fighting each other. And Sylvie ends up tricking Loki to get him in the time, like she hits the time pad. He goes back to the TVA. She ends up killing Kang. Before that happened, he explained to them that if you kill me, there are other variants out there that are not as nice as I am. Number one, you'll mess up the timeline. It'll all be messed up and tangled, and you'll basically open the door to the multiverse. And then you'll open the door to other Kangs. What he's doing is keeping everything at bay. So it's like he's doing a good thing, but at the same time, with the TVA, it kind of screws other things up, because it screwed her life up just for existing. What Loki did, with him when he teleported. All these different things are. It's like the TVA is a little bit of good, a little bit of bad. You're not sure how much good, how much bad. I don't know. I guess it's like government. So Loki makes it back to the TVA, and you actually notice a little bit of difference, because he left the TVA, or when we last saw the TVA, it was Mobius and B-15, I believe. They were talking about everything that was going on. Well, when we see them again, when Loki goes back, they look like they're basically the same, but Mobius looks at Loki like he doesn't know him. He's like, "Who are you? You're in accounting." He recognizes what he's wearing, and he thinks he just works there. He has no idea who Loki is, and Loki looks, and he doesn't see the statue of the timekeepers anymore. It's Kang, and that's where it ends. But I'm thinking that Loki is now in an alternate timeline. Now, how that happened? Maybe now that the timeline is obscured, it's all untangled, maybe the time pad cannot directly, in other words, the time pad just made you go to different, back to the TVA or whatever. Now there's multiple TVAs. Now, one thing I will say about the TVA, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought the TVA existed outside of time, outside of the timeline. So therefore, if you get transported back to the TVA, there's no alternate TVA. There's only one. Now, there are alternate variants of the people that work in there, but the TVA itself, there should not be a variant of that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Another possibility is that he changed time. Therefore, instead of it being the TVA with the timekeepers, it was the TVA with Kang. And that's why you saw the statue of Kang versus the timekeepers. In other words, there was no timekeepers to begin with. It was just Kang. And this statue actually looked more like the Kang from the comic books versus the one we got as the He Who Remains. So I have this theory, and this is kind of a big deal for me because it has a little bit of the traditional story that I like and the new story that I like. So hear me out. What I think they're setting up is Secret Wars. Now, the directors of Endgame and Infinity War have actually mentioned that if they came back to Marvel, they would love to do a Secret Wars film. Now, when I think of Secret Wars, I think of 1984 Secret Wars, which is number 1. But they also had a Secret Wars, I forget, maybe 2012, 2014, I'm not sure. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure I am. But they also had a different Secret Wars. The storyline was all the multiverses, all the universes in the multiverse were coming together, and you had these two, the Ultimate Universe and the 616 Universe coming together, and they were basically going to collide, and if that happened, it was going to just be destroyed. You had heroes from both sides and villains fighting each other to basically become the Supreme One. And now that is a whole convoluted story with Doom becoming God and all that stuff, but it's way more than just that. But I think what's going to happen is they're going to adapt. They're going to take probably from the original Secret Wars, they're going to take from the new Secret Wars, and they're going to make a storyline. This storyline is going to take probably as long as it did the Infinity Saga, like 10 years or whatever. It's probably going to take a while because there's a lot of story to be put into this. Personally, if you're going to have Kang the Conqueror messing with time, and now you're going to introduce the multiverse with the new Spider-Man movie coming out, I think this is the right way to go. Now you can include the Beyonder. It's up to them. I think that would be a missed opportunity if they didn't. However, Kang being the main villain, probably going to be him. But that's where I think they're going with this. We could possibly see a Secret Wars in the future. I don't know how long that's going to take, but that's going to be interesting. And don't forget, at the credits, they did confirm that there is a season 2. All in all, I thought this was a great episode. It was a great ending to a actually surprisingly great series that really did not need to happen. However, with the story they went with, and considering the path I believe that they're going with, it really proved that it was a necessary series, and it was really good. Well, that about does it for me. Let me know what you thought in the comments about this episode. Let me know what you thought about my theory, and let me know if you have any theories of your own of how they're going to move forward with not only Kang, but with the multiverse. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget, while you're there, you know what to do. As always, I am Clint the Knick-Knack, and I will see you on the next one.